Representing the business of boxing, ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for Manager Marty.
Thank you. You're far too kind. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the jury, members of the Roll the Tape film crew, welcome to another episode, a special edition of Roll the Tape podcast with Manager Marty. I'm your host, Manager Marty. We need answers. I want to first welcome everybody that's joining me live in living color from all across the world. And I also want to welcome those that are watching the replay of this live. I appreciate your viewership. I also want to welcome another audience, my Facebook family. This is my first official broadcast where I'm streaming on multiple platforms, YouTube and Facebook. And so I welcome my Facebook family. I promise you, you will be entertained today, but most importantly, you will learn something about the business of boxing that you did not know. You will learn something about the sport of boxing that you did not know prior to you encountering this broadcast and even this YouTube channel. And that goes for both of my audience members on Facebook and the Roller Tape family on YouTube. I don't even know where to start with this. But the first thing I have to do is I have to welcome my haters, my spies, and my detractors. You are as equally welcome. Now that we got all that out the way, enough with the hugs, handshakes, and Valentine's Day cards. Let's get to some boxing. Come on in, grab a plate. I have some food that I want to serve you. Some food for thought. Before I do all of that, though, because listen now, the Roll the Tape family that's here with me live, you know we have to get the air fryer up to 500 degrees before this broadcast is over. So for my new audience members, what that means is that we need and greatly appreciate all monetary contributions to help support the channel and to defray the cost of maintaining the channel, especially with the content and added value that's provided to you. Much appreciated. Now, we're going to talk about two things. Jaron Ennis' win last night, technical knockout. And then we're going to talk about who I think his next opponent should be when it comes to the business of boxing. And of course, Brian Norman Sr., unfortunately for him and his son, who's a professional boxer by the name of Brian Norman Jr., unfortunately for them, they have to sit in the hot seat on this channel today. Matter of fact, they're not the only two. The management team, Jolene and Adrian, I got 2 more seats reserved for them too. So all 4 of them will have to sit in the hot seat today. I have some questions I wanted to ask them. We need answers. Before I get to my questions and before I talk about what happened last night, let me play a small little snippet of the audio, right? This audio I'm going to play was from the post-fight press conference when the fight was over, of course. And these are some things that Boots said And these are some things that the promoter, Eddie Hearn from Matchroom over there in the UK, this is what he said. I'm going to play it. I want y'all to hear it because I'm going to spin the block, bust a Yui, as we say in Philly, right? And then I'm going to air fry on it. Because I have to lay a foundation, for a lot of things that we've been talking about thus far from the month of September of 2024 all the way up until yesterday in the YouTube boxing community. We need answers. So I'm going to play the audio, and then we're going to come back. I'm going to air fry on it. And I would like to see if we can come to a common agreement by the time all this is over. You know what? I'm doing way too much talking. Don't take my word for it. Roll the tape.
Well, it's expensive because his money goes up.
Yeah.
That's the reality.
Y'all don't know. I took a pay cut for this fight too.
Boots gave
less money for this fight.
Gave Stannonus money to get him in the ring. We hear at the press conference, Stannonus has wanted Boots for years. Well, who's ever heard that?
Right.
We never had a phone call.
This fight happened because of me. I took less money. I gave Stannonus more money to fight me.
And that's not
that shows who really wanted to fight.
And that's not what we do or what we want to do. But sometimes as a team, you move forward collectively. And that's why these guys are great to work with. They're chasing greatness. But now, after a performance like that, no, we don't take less money. We take more money. So the other guys they'll get paid, but they have to show some ambition. It's just money, 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 money. What about trying to be number one in the division? Guys like Brian Norman, these guys, with all due respect to Brian Norman, he just boxed for about $150,000 on an undercard of Michaela Meyer against Andy Ryan at the Fontainebleau in Las Vegas. If we go back to the Wells Fargo now to unify again, he will fill the whole place, 18,000, 19,000, unquestionably. So there's money in the pot, but you've got to show ambition as well.
Did y'all hear that? Let's do an audio check. Roll the tape, family. We live and live in color. Y'all already know how I come. Y'all already know how I carry it. Did y'all hear that? Real quick, let's do an audio check. Did y'all hear what Boots said and the promoter Eddie Hearn from the UK? Y'all heard that, right? We're going to talk about that, but let's lay the foundation properly first. So last night, right? Atlantic City, New Jersey, Boardwalk Hall, right? Boots, IBF welterweight champion of the world. He puts his belt on the line. He's fighting against another undefeated fighter, Imantas Stannonus, right? Stannonus was also a world champion, WBA world champion. They both put their belts on the line last night. They both were undefeated before last night. But the point I'm making is this was not one of those fights where you have a professional fighter who has a lot of skills, who has a lot of arsenals, a lot of arsenal attacks in their repertoire, fighting against an opponent who really lacked skills. Right? Let's be clear on that. Let's just be clear on that front. Let's make sure we establish that. Because a lot of people, I'm going right in, a lot of people criticized Boots. Y'all remember that? Some of y'all watching me live right now was criticizing Boots. Y'all remember when a couple months ago, Boots was offered an opportunity to compete on a Riyadh season card in another country. I think it was Saudi Arabia, right? To compete against a guy named Virgil Ortiz Jr., who was one weight class above Boots' weight class at 154 pounds. Y'all remember that? Okay. And then, not only that, Boots was expected to compete against Virgil Ortiz Jr. on the undercard. In other words, he wouldn't be the main event attraction at the event. He would be like right below the main event. And I'm explaining this to people that do not know the sport of boxing or do not know the business of boxing. I have to lay down the foundation because we have a new audience here, right? And most of you know who I am. So that's why I'm laying the foundation. So now, people criticized Boots Ennis on YouTube. Content creators, members of the media, criticized Boots because he declined to become an undercard fighter and compete on another promoter's card and event in another country in a higher weight division, which means that he would not be able to defend his title. Let's be clear on that. It's funny to me though, right? Some of the same people that criticize Boots for declining to fight Virgil Ortiz in another country on the undercard at a higher weight division so that he can fight and become unified as a champion, they're the same ones now praising him, giving him credit for winning last night. I think that's so amazing. You can't have it both ways. I told y'all that by the phone booth last week. You can't have it both ways. It's either Boots a duck or he's not. People kept saying he was ducking Virgil Ortiz. Y'all remember that? Y'all remember that. Some of you were here when you heard people. I mean, some of you have favorite content creators in boxing. And your favorite content creator probably was one of them criticizing Boots for not fighting Virgil Ortiz on an undercard. Because Boots wanted to remain the main event attraction. You know, like he did at the Wells Fargo Center in July of 2024. You know, like he did 4 months later after the fact, spent the block, bust the U-turn, went back to the same venue that was extremely successful in November of 2024. Does it again. Major event, massive numbers, ticket sales, right? And then now this time, April 2025, he goes to Boardwalk Hall, Atlantic City, New Jersey. He was criticized for wanting to do that and wanting to capitalize off of the notoriety he gained from being a main attraction, headlining his own card on pay-per-view in his hometown, where the city of Philadelphia never had a professional boxing event of that magnitude where the 76ers play. The young man made history. And guess what? He was criticized for it. And you don't have to take, you don't have to take my word for it, because people don't have enough integrity to admit it. So that's why I'm a double salute my guy, He like family to me. Member of the channel, supervisor of the Roll to Take film crew, my guy Lucky McKinnels. Lucky, thank you for your contribution and your support to the channel. Lucky just said, I'm guilty of criticizing Boots, and last night I was proven wrong. See, it takes integrity. I didn't know Lucky McKinnels was going to come out and send a super chat and say that. I had no idea. This is not rehearsed. I don't use scripts when I go live, by the way. This is not rehearsed. This is, we live. When we live, we live. Y'all know how, you know how we carry it, right? So it wasn't just Lucky. Lucky's a fan of boxing. I'm talking about content creators who have influence, who have a fan base, right? Who have name recognition, criticizing Boots. And some of them probably going to be the same ones if they haven't done it now. And if they haven't done it yet, oh, coming up this week, they're going to be the same ones trying to praise Boots. Not just taking the fight, but also winning in dramatic fashion and becoming unified in the welterweight division. There's 2 more professional fights that Boots will have to compete in order to become undisputed in the welterweight division. Because those 2 fights will allow Boots to fight against the 2 other champions in the division. Mario Barrios, who's the WBC welterweight champion of the world, and of course, Brian Norman Jr., the son of Brian Norman Sr. We're going to get to him in about a few seconds. Hold your plate. I'm going to dump some food on there, but we have to get the air fryer up. The air fryer have to be increased to 500 degrees, not 500. I don't have to be politically correct. I have my Facebook family with me now. 500. That's how we talk in Philly. 500. A half a man. We need the air fryer to go up. And the more the air fryer increases, the more the education is going to increase. And how are we going to be able to do that? All you have to do is send in a super chat. Y'all already know how we do on YouTube, but we got a new audience, so I have to lay the foundation here. Or you can cash at me. $ Manager Marty is at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to contribute to the channel so that we can continue to produce and provide great content for you. And it's greatly appreciated. And of course, you know I will publicly acknowledge you for your contributions and your support to the channel. Now, Boots go in this fight, right? And I'm going to tell y'all something, right? Stannonus is not a pushover. He's not a pushover, like, at all. When I tell you he's not a pushover, he's not an easy lick. I know he only has 15 professional bouts under his belt, but he's not a fighter who go in the ring and not give his all and not show his skill set. Last night, he was fighting against a guy who's special in Boots. But we have to tip our hat to him because he stepped up to the plate and he put his belt on the line. And he believed in his heart, his team believed as well, that he can beat Boots. And when he was in the fight, he didn't run from Boots. He stood toe-to-toe with Boots. He made it an interesting, entertaining fight. In fact, he landed a lot of good shots on Boots. We're going to talk about that in another segment. But for the day, I'm trying to lay a foundation. Because Stannonus was not on everybody's list to fight. Right? But Boots stepped up to the plate, and so did he. And both of those guys deserve credit. Now, with that being said, because I love how people are in my live chat right now, right? And I'm reading a little bit of it. That says that the style that Stannonus have is tailor-made for Boots. I got a question on that. If Stannonus was so much of a tailor-made fighter for Boots, then what did he fight him for? Let me reframe the question. Why was Boots the only champion at 40? Let me reframe that question. How come Brian Norman Jr. didn't fight Stannonus? Don't get mad at me. I'm just a promoter. I'm just a prosecutor. I'm just a professor. I'm just a preacher. I'm just asking the question. How come Brian Norman Jr. didn't fight him? That's what I want to know. Because in his last fight, he fought against a guy that was coming off of a 2-year layoff. An older veteran. And yes, Brian Norman Jr. did what he was supposed to do. He went in there and he won in dramatic fashion by knocking out the opponent within 3 rounds. Happy to hear that. But the guy was coming off of a 2-year layoff and he's in his 30s, right? Okay. So why didn't Brian Norman Jr. fight Stannonus? Why didn't Brian Norman Jr. fight Mario Barrios? Brian Norman Jr. is the WBO welterweight champion of the world, right? So he could have put his belt on the line and he could have fought Stannonus since he didn't want to fight Boots in the fall when Eddie Hearn, Matchroom, and Boots offered him not 1 payday, not 2 paydays, but 3. That totaled up to $1.75 million that they turned down. Why didn't he fight him? Why didn't he fight Stannonus? Okay, then. I know the answers to the question. I'm asking the people that always come over here to detract and spy on me and hate on me and conflict and always trying to find little loopholes to contradict me. I'm in the business of boxing. You can't contradict me. This is what we do. But I appreciate the love. See, as much as I embrace the love, I have to embrace the hate that come with it. I love it. You know, I live for moments like this because I don't want to be controversial. All right, I'm lying. I do mean to be controversial. But all of that comes with education, right? So now let's put this in proper perspective real quick. So you mean to tell me that Stannonus don't get any credit because people believe that his style was tailor-made for Boots? If you can say that, you can say that Boots' style was tailor-made for Stannonus. Right? We can say the same. Hey, because at the end of the day, this is boxing. And most people that talk about boxing on YouTube or in the media, they never even put on a pair of hand wraps. Never hit a punching bag. Never went any rounds in sparring. Never even touched the focus mitts. Never even jumped rope in the gym. Never touched a speed bag. Never even did 10 push-ups in the boxing gym. Don't know how to move on the balls of their feet, but yet they're able to criticize professionals. That's crazy to me. If anything, we should be more accepted. We should be more acceptable to the boxers by listening to them. They're the professionals. They're the experts instead of trying to criticize their performances because they know how to do something that an average person don't know. They have a skill set regardless. Even the guy or a woman that you think of in your mind to say, you know what, this person is trash. They're not a good fighter as a professional. They still have more skill set than the average person. So you have to give them credit. That's all I'm saying. Right? Double salute to my guy, Gary, member of the channel, supervisor of the Roll the Tape film crew. Gary, I appreciate your support and contribution, man. Gary says, Boots all day. The PIAC tour continues. 34-0. Absolutely. Because Boots right now, he is 34 wins, no losses. He's still undefeated, right? So when you look at like people like Stannonus, you have to still give him credit. He hit Boots with some good shots last night. Preferably speaking, he was targeting Boots with the left hook and the left jab. I mean, we saw it. But this is boxing. You're going to get hit, right? And Boots stood up tall. Now, anybody that was sitting in front or behind me will tell you that I kept screaming, go to the body, Boots. Attack his body. Because Boots started to abandon the body attack. And I knew that would pay dividends to slow Stannonus down later on in the stretch of the fight. Double salute to my guy, Jay Pitt City. Appreciate your contribution and your support to the channel. Jay Pitt City says, he did what Norman Jr. didn't do. He stepped up. Meanwhile, Norman was an undercard of a women's fight for pennies. Hey, I didn't even get to that point yet. But the air fryer is now at 375 degrees. But once we get the air fryer to 400 degrees, I promise you, I'm going to segue my way over to that point because that's the next purpose that I want to fulfill in this live, to give you all the education of boxing by using all of these things that's happening in live time as teachable moments. Now, we heard Brian Norman Sr. say on AM Sports Media, that's my guy, both of them guys are my guys, right? Brian Norman Sr. says on AM Sports Media channel, so, you know, double salute to AM Sports Media that conducted an interview with Brian Norman Sr., the father and trainer of Brian Norman Jr. And Brian Norman Sr. said, what was that, the other day? Yeah, I think before this fight, he said that Boots don't have any power and that his son will knock Boots out. Now, he's been talking about, you know, his son knocking Boots out for a long time. But he specifically said that Boots don't have any punching power. Look like Boots had punching power last night. How about we start asking the fighters that get punched by Boots, does he have punching power? Because last night, from what I saw, the punching power was in full effect. That's what I saw. I mean, his punching power worked in this fight last night. I mean, that's what I saw. Double salute to my guy, Fort Greene Pharaoh. He's a member of the channel, supervisor of the Roller Tape Film Crew. Fort Greene, thank you for your contribution and your support to the channel. Fort Greene says, peace and blessings, King. Peace and blessings back to you, Fort Greene. It's always a pleasure to have you joining us, man. Appreciate you, man. So now that the power has been established, that it still works. Power been established, it still works, right? I want to know what's holding Brian Norman Jr. up from fighting Boots. Because I believe that based on the performance that Boots displayed last night and previous performances, but particularly this one, because now he's unified with not just one, but 2 world title belts. What's next for him? Based on the performance last night, based on Boots wanting to fulfill his dream and accomplish his goal of being undisputed in the welterweight division, something that he still keep getting criticized for, right? I think his next fight should be Brian Norman Jr. I mean, there's no reason of waiting anymore. We've all waited long enough. And as long as Brian Norman Sr. go from one platform to another platform and go on this platform and that platform and saying that Boots will get knocked out by his son, is making it more interesting for people to see whether or not it's true. Whether or not Brian Norman Jr. can beat Boots. I mean, why not fight next? What's the point of waiting? There's no point in waiting anymore. Double salute to my guy. He's like family to me. My guy Lump, representing Florida. Thank you for your contribution and your support. And because Lump gave the contribution, and I have to say this because this is equally as important, the viewership. The viewership is increasing exponentially. The air fryer is at 400 degrees. Let's talk about it. I want to play something that Brian Norman Sr. said on AM Sports Media, but I'm not going to play it because I've already given the shout out. I want to play it, but I already given the shout out to AM Sports Media. All right, I already told y'all what Brian Norman said, but I want to play something that Adrian Clark, the manager, said when he was interviewed, and I forgot what platform was he interviewed on 7 months ago. Now, I did a live video on this. Most of you that's here watching me live in living color, y'all were here. Some of you saw it in form of a video that I published, right? When I use it as an excerpt. But I want to give a quick reminder because here we are now. Now, all this happened 7 months ago, where Eddie Hearn offered Brian Norman Jr. a lot of money, a boatload of money, in his words, to fight Boots and put both of their belts on the line to become unified in the division. And unfortunately, Brian Norman Jr., through his team, obviously it was more so his team, right? His dad, his, boxing managers, they turned down the fight. Okay? That's what they did. Don't get mad at me. I'm just telling you what they did. They turned down the fight. But I want to play it because a lot of people forgot about the things that I said in live time when we heard the explanation for why they turned the fight down. Some of y'all remember that, right? Some of y'all remember that. Some of you were here, right? Yeah, some of y'all remember that. I'm about to play the audio, but before I do that, because we got the viewership now. Double salute to my guys, my friends at Quartler Manners LLC. They are friends of the channel, but they're also sponsors of the channel. And if you need a personal injury attorney and you reside in the Pennsylvania and the New Jersey area, anywhere, any city in those states, Pennsylvania and New Jersey, you may need a personal injury lawyer. Please contact my guys, the friends of this channel, the sponsors, Quartler Manners LLC. Their information is right at the bottom of your screen. Of course, their number is 1-844-50-FIGHT. 50 fight. Hey, because one thing that I know about them, and I'm speaking from personal experiences on numerous occasions where I not only hired them, but recommended them to other family members and friends within the last, my first case with them was 10 years ago, 2015. Last 10 years, WeFightWeWin.com. I'm going to let it roll on the bottom of your screen, probably for the duration of this live broadcast, so that you all can go call them. Go on their website, their number and everything else, and their services that they offer and provide is definitely on their website. But now that we got that out the way, I want to play the audio because I broke this down 7 months ago, and I definitely did publicly criticize Brian Norman Jr.'s team because his representation to me did not do a good job securing a fight with Boots Ennis at the time. This was literally months ago. At the time that I believe Brian Norman Jr. and Boots should have really fought and put both of their titles on the line. And because that did not happen, obviously Boots moved on to the next champion in the division besides Brian Norman Jr. and Mario Barrios, and that was Stannonus, which that fight took place last night in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Now, I want y'all to hear everything that transpired because I'm setting the foundation for what we're going to talk about in a few minutes. Now, just to give y'all this reference, September the 4th, 2024, September 4th, I conducted a live. September 4th, 2024, I conducted a live. This is an excerpt from the live that I published, and I was basically reacting to what Adrian Clark said and their reason. I call it an excuse, personally speaking and professionally speaking, their reason of turning down the fight against Boots to become unified in the division. I just want y'all to hear a few minutes of it because a lot of people might have forgot. You know, a lot of things happen in boxing over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And sometimes a lot of things can get lost in translation. So that's why I like playing old interviews. I like listening to what people said a year ago, 5 years ago. Y'all notice that. Y'all know how I am. Because when things happen in live time, I can use them as teacher. You know, I'm doing way too much talking. Don't take my word for it.
If the reward don't match the risk of us going to Philly to fight Jaron Ennis in his backyard.
Stop. If the risk doesn't match the reward for them to go to Philly and fight Jaron Ennis in his backyard, can somebody please tell me in Brian Norman Jr.'s last fight, didn't he go to the backyard of the last opponent in May in San Diego? Just answer the question, somebody. Didn't he go, Brian Norman Jr., didn't he go to San Diego to fight in another fighter's backyard in his last fight? Yes or no? Okay then. Thank you. Somebody said thank you. Y'all wasn't complaining when y'all went to the guy's backyard for $99,900. It was cool for y'all to go in the last opponent's backyard and fight for $99,000, almost $100,000. But now all of a sudden it's a risk to go in Philly to fight Boots. It's not a risk because remember, Brian Norman Sr. said his son will knock Boots out. That don't sound like a high risk to me. If you know you can knock somebody out, that's not a high risk. In fact, the opponent's not even a threat. Was Robert Helenius a threat for Deontay Wilder? No, because we all knew that Deontay Wilder can knock him out. All right, then. So if Brian Norman Jr. can knock Boots out, this ain't no high risk. Going to somebody else's backyard is not a new condition for Brian Norman Jr. Because I heard Brian Norman Sr. say to Mill City Boxing last week that they're used to going to fighters' backyard to spar them. It's no new condition for him. So what high risk are we talking about? All right. Okay.
And we're bringing the same thing as him. It's not like he got 3 belts and we got 1 belt. It's not like he's this household name that everybody knows and celebrates, and we're nobody. They're both world champions.
All right. Now I'm going to stop it there. Again. Now, here's the issue of contention. One of the reasons why Brian Norman Jr.'s team turned down the fight with Boots, right, was because they had to agree to fight Boots in Boots' hometown, my home city of Philadelphia, right, Pennsylvania. They turned it down and said, we don't want to go to his backyard. We don't want to compete against him in Philly. We don't want to. Now, I don't know how they think they're going to generate money anywhere else fighting Boots, because I told y'all this before. I'm going to tell you all again, and this is not my opinion. This is a fact. Brian Norman Jr., who is from Atlanta, Georgia, never fought in his own hometown in the main event, ever. So if we don't know if you can sell any tickets from a business perspective in your own backyard, how can you complain about going to someone else's backyard who has a proven record in Philly of selling tickets and making and generating money? The second reason, I call it an excuse, but the second reason why Brian Norman Jr.'s manager, as you just heard him say, turned down the fight was because it's not like Boots is coming to the table with something of significance, of value, basically. They're coming to the table with the same thing. In other words, this Boots is the IBF champion. He has 1 title. And Brian Norman Jr. is a world champion, and he has 1 title. Now, because Boots won last night, not only do Boots have 1 title, But as of last night, Boots have 2 titles. Do you know what that means? Now that Boots have 2 titles, when it's time for Brian Norman Jr., his representation, Boots and his representation to get together and negotiate, do y'all know what that means now? That means that Boots' representation, which they already had more leverage from the very beginning of the initial negotiations in September, now they're going to have greater leverage because Boots is coming to the table with 2 belts to Brian Norman Jr.'s 1. Not only that, it gets worse from here. Not only that, but the first time there were 3 offers. I don't want to run the whole playback because a lot of people already know this. But remember, I'm opening up the live podcast for a new audience on Facebook. They may not know what's going on. I got to catch everybody up to speed because we family and everybody need to be on the same page. Now, with that being said, there was 3 offers made to Brian Norman Jr. by Boots' representation. This is not an opinion. These are facts. The first offer, $1 million. $1 million to fight Boots in Philadelphia. Both belts on the line. His team said, no, that's not enough money. Boots' representation, the promoter, Eddie Hearn, comes back a second time. What about $1.2 million? They turned it down again. No, that's not enough money. You got to bring the numbers up higher. Boots' representation, Eddie Hearn, the promoter, comes back a third and final time and say, this is my final offer. $1.75 million. So on the final offer, let's be clear on this. Final offer, Boots' representation, Eddie Hearn, the promoter of Matchroom Promotions, came back and offered an additional $525,000. Additional. And Brian Norman, through his management team, turned it down. There's several perspectives. I gave the perspective before. I'm going to do it again. I always ask people this question. Is $1.5 million a lot of money? Some people say yes, depending on who you ask, and some people say no, depending on who you ask, right? Let's put this in proper perspective. I have people all over the world that watch this podcast and support this channel. Let's just condense it to an average American citizen. If an average American citizen earned $50,000 per year, right? I'm talking about through their occupation. If an American citizen earned and gross $50,000 per year, let's do the math. It will take that American citizen 30 years to accumulate $1.5 million. Is my math correct? Let's do a math check real quick. Let's see if we can do it, man. Can somebody in the comments section or the chat just say yes or no? I just want to make sure my math is correct. Yes or no? Let me run it back one more time. $50,000 per year. Annual salary will be equivalent to earning and grossing $1.5 million in 30 years. Yes or no? Is my math correct? I don't want my math to be off. Y'all know this. Some of y'all that's the family. The family know this. The family know this. Some of y'all might not know this. My favorite 2 subjects in school from elementary to high school was math and girls. My favorite two subjects in school, elementary school all the way up to high school, was math and girls. I guess that's why some people call me Mac Marty. Anyway, the point I'm making is this, Ty and JSir72. It will take an American citizen 30 years to generate $1.5 million off of a $50,000 per year salary. But it would have took Brian Norman Jr. 30 minutes to generate $1.5 million to fight Boots Ennis and become unified with 2 belts in the division. I'm going to let y'all process that for a second. I'm going to say that again for the people in the back. It would take an American citizen 30 years to accumulate and gross and earn $1.5 million off of a $50,000 per year salary. But it would have took Brian Norman Jr. 30 minutes to generate that same money, those same earnings of $1.5 million to fight Boots Ennis and become unified in a division with 2 belts. Lord have mercy. What kind of representation do they have? Everybody know at this point, in boxing and out of boxing, on YouTube and off of YouTube, family, friends, associates, and non alike know that I have a lot of experience being a licensed professional boxing manager in multiple states here in America. If Brian Norman Jr. were my client, if Brian Norman Jr. were my client, and I was representing Brian Norman Jr. as his manager, man, we would be having a totally different conversation right now. It's Sunday, so I can preach, can I? Oh, okay. It's Sunday, right? It's Sunday, special edition here. You ain't gonna find this nowhere else. That's why I'm glad y'all here. The personality is on point today. All I'm saying is, how can you turn down 1.75? That's all I'm at. 1.75. How can you turn down $1.75 million against an opponent that you believe you can knock out? On the streets, on the block, they call that an easy lick. That's for my audience from the street. You know, I got audience members from all over the country, all over the world, and in every different walk of life that support and watch this channel. So I have to entertain everybody. I have to make an appeal to everybody. People from the streets watch this channel. Want to know why? Because they remember when I used to be in the streets. People in boxing watch this channel because they remember how I used to be in boxing. People at work watch the channel. I can go on and on in the different environments, in the different communities that I represent. The point that I'm making is I have to appeal to all. They call that hustling backwards on the block. I'm just trying to figure out, how can you turn, let me give it to you like this. Me and my man Lucky was talking earlier, and we broke it down like this. And I have to say this because I want to appeal to everybody to make it understandable and comprehensible to others. If somebody was trying to rob a bank, this is the negative. I'm going to give you a negative, I'm going to give you a positive illustration. Negative illustration. Somebody wanted to rob a bank, right? They realized that it's $100,000 in the vault, but it's 10 security officers with Kevlar bulletproof vests on and assault rifles that's guarding the vault. And then there's a bank around the corner. There's $1.75 million in that vault. But it's a security guard who's unarmed and 70 years old, and there's no backup on the scene. It's only, it's only one 70-year-old security guard. No Kevlar bulletproof vest on. He's unarmed. And no backup on the scene. You mean to tell me that the bank robber is going to choose in his or her right state of mind that they're going to risk their freedom and life to rob that bank with only $100,000 in the vault with 10 security officers on deck, Kevlar bulletproof vests, backup, and assault rifles, opposed to just going around the corner with his $1.75 million in the vault. One security guard, 70 years old, no backup on the scene, no firearms or weapons, unarmed, no Kevlar bulletproof vest. I'm just asking the question. That's all. I know that might be a terrible analogy, Cornelius. It just makes sense to me. That's the negative. I'm just saying, that's the negative. That's for my audience members that's still on the block. We gotta show them love because they support the channel. I'm praying for y'all. Get off the block, y'all. If you in the streets, I'm praying for you. But right now, for teachable moment purposes, for the scope of what I'm talking about right now, all I'm saying is it seemed easier. Why am I bringing that up? Because Brian Norman Jr., let me bring it back home. Brian Norman Jr., in his last fight, in the previous fight before that, Victor, made between $100,000 and $150,000. In other words, he reached his maximum earning potential. And the fighters that he fought was supposed to be tough competition compared to Boots. I'm saying compared to Boots because, you know, Brian Norman Sr., his dad said that Boots is an easy lick. In other words, is that his son will knock Boots out cold with no problem. He's an easy opponent. So you mean to tell me you turned down $1.75 million to fight a person you can knock out and defeat easily? But you chose instead to fight two fighters who were tougher competition for less money? What church do they do? I was going to say where they do that at, and then I was going to say what church do they do that at? But Marvin Sapp told the people to close the door. I think Marvin Sapp got 40,000 in Marvin Sapp got 40,000 in 5 minutes. And you mean to tell me that don't have nothing to do with it? Nothing I'm talking about. It's just Sunday, y'all. Marvin Sapp, right? He generated like 40,000 in 5 minutes in a church. And you mean to tell me Brian Norman Jr. turns down $1.75 million that he could have made within 30 minutes or less by knocking Boots out, instead to go fight and make $100,000 for tougher competition? Where they do this at, y'all? I'm just asking. Because his manager said that after they finished allocating all of the funds, if they would have accepted the $1.75 million, and after, you know, Brian Norman Jr. paid his expenses, having multiple managers, and then he has Bob Arum, Top Rank Promotions, as a promoter, so he had to give a piece of his compensation, 30%, I believe, 20 to 30% of his compensation to Bob Arum, the promoter, and then 20 to 30% or 33 and a third, which is the maximum, as us managers know about, to manager and representation, and then taxes, and all of these different things. The third reason why they turned the fight down and declined the third offer is because after all the expenses are going to be paid for, this is according to his representation, don't get mad at me, Brian Norman Jr. will only end up with $800,000. If a young man in his mid-20s can't live off of $800,000 within 6 months, and I'm saying within 6 months because I expect for the management and representation to have him back in the ring within 6 months had he beat Boots, right? Okay. If a young man in his early 20s can't live off of $800,000 within 6 months, there's something wrong, not just with the program, but also with money management. There's something wrong with that picture here. Because if you add the math up, how much was the expenses when Brian Norman Jr. fought for $100,000? Didn't change the fact that he had to pay taxes. Didn't change the fact that he had to pay his management and representation. And it definitely didn't change the fact that the promoter was going to get his cut. So y'all was willing to do that for $100,000 to $150,000, but not for $1.75 million? Just say y'all don't want to fight Boots. Just say that Brian Norman Jr. just can't beat Boots right now. Just say that. I have more respect if you keep it real and be 100 about it and say, that's just what that is. We're not ready right now. I don't think he's scared of Boots. In my personal opinion and in my professional opinion, I don't think Brian Norman Jr. is afraid of Boots. I don't. I do believe he have doubts about beating Boots, but I don't think he's scared of Boots. I think other people are scared. Yeah. I think his representation and his dad is scared because obviously the only leverage that Brian Norman Jr. have, period, in his career is having a world title. Because if you go back and look at it, for what it's worth, his promotion company is not pushing him like they pushing Keyshawn Davis. You don't know what I'm talking about? I'm going to bring it back. Brian Norman Jr. just fought on the undercard of Michaela, right? She's from the UK or Canada. Where's she from? UK? The one, she fought Clarissa Shields and did a good job in that fight. Very close fight. You mean to tell me your promotion company have you competing on the undercard when you are a world champion? He's better off doing business with Turkey, you know. Isn't that what all the other fighters doing, going on the undercard and making it acceptable and cool to do that? You're a world champion. Now, I'm not criticizing. Okay, I am being a little bit critical on certain fighters being on undercards, certain ones. But in this case, Brian Norman Jr. could have fought Stannonus. If they turned down the fight to fight Boots, right? Why didn't they go and fight Stannonus and put both belts on the line before Boots even could be in his sweepstakes to fight him? How come they didn't, Brian Norman Jr., I'm talking about when I say they, how come Brian Norman Jr. and his representation did not lobby and negotiate for him to fight against Mario Barrios, the other champion, since they didn't fight Boots? But instead, he fought a guy in his 30s who haven't competed in the ring professionally within 2 years. What did he benefit? What added value was Brian Norman's performance for Top Rank and the promoter? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Don't get mad at me. Don't get mad. Hey, listen, I'm just talking about things that other people are afraid to talk about. And guess what? I'm saying it live to y'all, but everything and y'all already know me. Everything that I'm saying now, when I see Brian Norman Sr., and if he want to have a conversation with me about it, I'm going to say the same thing. Whether it be on YouTube, Facebook, social media, or in person, I'm going to say the same thing. because I know the business of boxing. I am the representation of the business of boxing, and I'm trying to help these guys. All it takes for them to do is humble themselves. It's not about what we think our worth is. I told y'all that. Remember a year ago, and then remember 7 months ago? Y'all want me to play it? Or y'all want me to say it? I'd rather say it because we live right now. Brian Norman Sr. and Brian Norman Jr.'s managers, they all have this mentality. We deserve. I deserve. I deserve. My son deserves. My client deserves at least 2 million. We deserve. We deserve. We deserve. I deserve. I deserve. I deserve. We deserve. How? What leverage do you have besides the actual belt that you're carrying? Which, by the way, 3% of his earnings when he compete have to go inside of the pockets, the purses, and the envelope of the WBO. I'll do a tutorial on that for a later date. What I'm getting at is just by being a world champion and you're competing for a belt, you're losing money. So what other incentive do an opponent get that has 2 belts like Boots get? Boots has 2 belts. What does he get out of the deal? He's going to get that other belt if he beats Brian Norman Jr., right? But if Brian Norman Jr. is not a world champion, we're not even having a discussion of him fighting Boots. So what other incentives do an opponent have of fighting Brian Norman Jr. besides the belt? Because he's not a big ticket seller. He doesn't generate pay-per-view buys. He never headlined his own card in his own backyard of Atlanta, Georgia. He never generated any resources for a promoter to say, I'm willing to risk A, B, C, and D as far as fiduciary to be able to not just, recoup our initial investment, but then make a profit, because that's business. There is none. What analytics and data can we use to substantiate and justify paying Brian Norman Jr. $1.75 million? There is none. So basically, Eddie Hearn was doing them a solid, was doing them a favor by overpaying them. If your worth range between $100,000 and $150,000, if your value ranges from $100,000 to $150,000, don't even expect to be in a conversation about $1 million. And somebody can say, well, Manager Marty, how can you say that? You don't have to take my word for it. Teofimo Lopez also signed to the same promoter that Brian Norman Jr. signed to, Top Rank, right? And Teofimo Lopez, world champion, didn't he say he never generated or got paid more than $500,000? And he's a more entertaining fighter and have a more magnetic personality than Brian Norman Jr. So if Bob Arum is not willing to pay him more than $500,000, with all of the dynamics and elements to who he is inside and outside of the ring, how can they justify paying Brian Norman Jr. that when he haven't even done half of what Teofimo has done? Teofimo Lopez has a huge following in New York City. The theater at Madison Square Garden is like a home base for him. Brian Norman Jr. doesn't have a home base. Please don't be in my chat, my comment sections, and my emails saying I'm hating on them, because I'm not. These are all facts. And if they listen to me long enough, they'll see that I am putting down something that they can pick up. One of the things I just put down is my phone. And they can pick that up too and call me, because they need help. They need better representation. Because, you know, if I was managing Brian Norman Jr., we wouldn't even be having this conversation. We wouldn't even be talking about any. In fact, he would have been fought at home. I don't care if only 200 people showed up. That's a good start for somebody of his caliber. That's a good start. I mean, not at 25-0. We'd have been did that. We would have did that. I'm not even gonna give my expertise away for free. All I'm saying is good representation in this business is priceless. And I keep telling y'all that. So now with that being said, is Eddie Hearn gonna be wrong if he go back to the negotiation table with Brian Norman Jr. and his team and tell them that he's not offering 1.75 million, that he's not going to offer 1.2 million, and that he's probably not going to offer them $1 million to fight Boots now? They lost their leverage because they allowed Boots to fight Stannonus and have an opportunity to win another title. Because now he's going to come to the table with 2 belts, and you're going to come to the table with 1. And he dominated Stannonus in dramatic fashion. So now the psyche of the fan base that was watching live on TV or their phones or electronic device and watching live at the actual venue, that's all they remember. One thing about fans in this sport, they always remember the last thing a fighter does. And the last thing that Boots did was what he did last night in dramatic fashion. That's the last thing that people are going to remember. So they're going to have an expectation level for Boots to do it again. But what lasting impression will Brian Norman Jr. bring to the table? That he knocked somebody out in the 3rd round that hasn't fought professionally in 2 years, and he's only generating $100,000 to $150,000 in compensation? They lost their leverage. They already didn't have enough leverage when they went to the table the first 3 times. And Eddie Hearn still was willing to pay $1 million, 1.2, and then add an additional $525,000 on top of it for the final offer. So no, Eddie Hearn would not be wrong. Would not be wrong for offering Brian Norman Jr. less than $800,000, or at least that's the maximum. 800. That's it. Because he's not generating no more than $150,000 in any of his fights. And guess what? Not only will Eddie Hearn have to pay him, let's say he do pay him, let's say 800. I'm just going to say 800 maximum, right? Eddie Hearn will not expect Brian Norman Jr. to sell any tickets because it's Boots' hometown. So the pressure would be on the fan base here in Philly, the fan base in New Jersey, Delaware, the tri-state area, the DMV area, to come and support Boots and buy tickets. Not a guy from down south as the B-side opponent. So that's a great come up for Brian Norman Jr., even if it is the maximum of $800,000. I'm just throwing that number out there because that's the number that his representation said after all the expenses are paid for, that's what he's going to walk away with. $800,000 is nothing to sneeze at, especially in boxing where, you know, opportunities are scarce. You don't know when the next payday is going to come in this sport. This is the hardest hustle in America. Now, with that being said, I'm going to replay the piece of the audio to illustrate my final point. The replay of the audio, the post-fight press conference that Boots had after the fight last night. And let's listen to what him and Eddie Hearn said. Don't take my word for it. Roll the tape.
Against the fight.
How much more expensive do you expect it to be?
Well, it's expensive because his money goes up.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's the reality.
Yeah, y'all don't know. I took a pay cut for this fight, too.
Boots
I took less money for this fight.
gave Stannonus money to get him in the ring. You know, we hear at the press conference, you know, Stannonus has wanted Boots for years. Well, who's ever heard that?
Right.
We never had a phone call.
This fight happened because of me. I took less money. I gave Stannonus more money to fight me.
And that's not...
That shows who really wanted to fight.
And that's not what we do or what we want to do. But sometimes as a team, you move forward collectively. And that's why these guys are great to work with. They're chasing greatness. But now, after a performance like that, no, we don't take less money. We take more money. So the other guys have got to... They'll get paid, but they have to show some ambition. It's just money, 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 money. What about trying to be number one in the division? Guys like Brian Norman, these guys, with all due respect to Brian Norman, he just boxed for about $150,000 on an undercard of Michaela Meyer against Andy Wright at the Fontainebleau in Las Vegas. We can, if we go back to the Wells Fargo now to unify again, he will fill the whole place, 18, 19,000, unquestionably. So there's money in the pot, but you've got to show ambition as well.
Did y'all hear that? Boots said he got paid less money to present this offer and fight Stannonus last night. Stannonus was offered more money to accept the fight to fight Boots. You mean to tell me Boots took less money? Let Stannonus make more money because he wanted to accomplish the goal and fulfill his dream of becoming unified and undisputed in this division. You mean to tell me Boots took less money to unify the belts against Stannonus, but Brian Norman Jr. and his team turned down way more money and then fight in their next fight without receiving a belt for the win or receiving a bag? They fumbled the bag. Don't get mad at me. These are facts. Boots headlined 3 cards in the last 1 year. So that's why when Boots said after the fight inside the ring, when he was asked, what's next for you? He said, I wanted to spend time with my family. I want to talk to my dad and my team. Go back to he didn't say the words drawing board, but we know that's standard in boxing. Go back to the drawing board and figure out what I want to do. Let me relax a little bit. Let me enjoy my win. Let me enjoy being unified as a champion. Let me take some time off and rest my body. And then I'll come back and let you all know what's next for me. Because Boots fought 3 times in 1 year. You know, people always criticizing stuff when they don't understand it. I'm talking about people that's on YouTube. They don't know nothing about the business of boxing. Man, these fighters fight once a year. Your favorite content creators say that. Boots fought 3 times in 1 year. Y'all don't remember? Remember, he fought in July. Remember? Y'all remember that fight. He fought in July. First time at the Wells Fargo Center. Successful event. Came back 4 months later in November 2024. Fight again. Wells Fargo Center. And then in April, last night, fights Atlantic City, New Jersey. Nearly packed house. Successful events. So from July of 2024 and April of 2025, Boots fought 3 times. And all 3 times that he fought, his title was on the line. He defended his belts. How many times did Brian Norman Jr. fight within the last 1 year? I rest my case. How much did he make? In total, at max, $250,000. And that amount is nothing to sneeze at. $100,000 is nothing to sneeze at. That's not peanuts. I don't know who's saying that. So all I'm trying to get at is they fumbled the bag. They lost leverage by Boots winning another title last night and having another third consecutive successful event. They need to start picking up what the manager. Oh, I got to call myself the manager of shopping carts. You know, Bill Haney said I'm the manager of Walmart and the manager of Target. I don't know where he get that from, but that's a shot that he keep throwing at me. But guess what? He won't come up here. He won't come up to the platform. But I tell you who I am inviting to the platform. Brian Norman Sr. I mean, he's going on everybody else's show. He's going on everybody else's YouTube channel. I mean, I've done about 7 videos with his name and his son's name in the title within 7 months. I'd love to talk to him. Come on up. Come up here. Let's talk. I mean, hopefully I can help those guys. I genuinely want to help them because they fumbling millions of dollars for no. I mean, I can assume the reason. The reason is very simple. Emantis Stannonus wanted to fight Boots, and he stepped up to the plate and fought Boots. And Boots equally wanted to fight Stannonus for years. Took a pay cut, stepped up to the plate, and fought Stannonus. And all we need to see is Brian Norman Jr. do the same. Because you can't talk big talk with small money. His dad keeps talking big talk, but their actions are not being congruent with their words. That's all I'm saying. Don't get mad at me. Double salute to my guy, Jay Miller, always supporting the channel, man. I appreciate your contribution and your support. Jay Miller says, Brian Norman Sr. told AM Sports Media that there's an aura over Boots in the gym that don't translate to the fight. That tells me that Brian Norman Jr. got handled in sparring. Brian Norman Sr. seemed quick to want this fight post Karen. We need answers. I totally agree, Jay Miller. See, when Boots' performance looked questionable in the eyes of some critics, or most people that really have a high expectation level for Boots' performances against Karen, the first and second fight, most notably the second fight, Boots was wildly criticized, right? And Boots came in and he even publicized and said he didn't do his best. He could have done better. He could have improved, right? But Brian Norman Sr. was very critical of Boots' performance and said he had no power and said he had all of these different flaws. And my point is, if it's that easy to beat Boots, if it's that easy now, you should never turn down millions of dollars to make easy money. Because boxing, professional boxing, is the hardest hustle in America. It's the hardest hustle in America, y'all. It really is. And look, some of these professional boxers that you might watch on TV, this is real. They might even have day jobs. It's hard. This is a hard business, y'all. Listen to the manager of boxing. Don't listen to them people that don't know the sport or know the business. Listen to me. I'm telling you. Some of them are Uber drivers, DoorDash drivers, mail carriers, FedEx delivery drivers, restaurant workers, you know what I mean? Store associates. And there's nothing to be ashamed of because there's so many opportunities in America. That's why all the people want to come over here and migrate here and live here, reside here. So much freedom. This is the land of opportunity. And nobody should be criticized for earning an honest days of living. Like I'm being insulted and criticized because Bill Haney saying I'm the manager of Walmart. I'm the manager of Target. And he's only saying those things to insult me because it undermines my experience and my knowledge in this business. But the bottom line is, and no, I'm really not a manager at Walmart or a manager at Target, but I have both uniforms, and don't make me go get it because I'll put it on for the people. Oh, we got Facebook here? Facebook, my Facebook family didn't even see the uniform. All right, next time I go live, I'm gonna go get my Walmart uniform, and I got a name tag too. I should go put it on right. Should I go put it? Should I wait or should I wait to go put it on now? I'll wait. Because Facebook never saw me live in entertainment. Should I wait? All right, I'm gonna wait. The air fryer not even at 500 degrees. It's at 425 degrees. I promise you, if it was at 500 degrees, I go get my uniform. I hold off though. It's all good. Yeah, I hold off. My I got my Walmart uniform, my Target uniform, and both my name tags. Yeah, I am the man. Yeah, we gonna run with it now. Yeah, I'm the manager of Walmart and the manager of Target. So what? What's wrong with having an honest day living? What's wrong with that? Since when do people start getting criticized for having a day job? All I'm saying is there are professional boxers right now, whether you see them on TV or not, they are earning an honest day's living while still have to maintain a family life, maintain a gym schedule to continue to train and stay in shape because they never know when a phone call can actually come to give them the opportunity that a Brian Norman Jr. and his team turned down. Still have to go through the emotional, spiritual, and financial toll that life confronts us with on a daily basis. So every professional boxer should be applauded and appreciated. That's all I'm saying. And when you have an opportunity to earn even $100,000 in this business, yes, if it's good business, take it. If it's going to, undermine your value and your integrity as a man or a woman, no. But I'm just saying, I'm talking about good business, right? I'm talking about with good ethics. That's all I'm saying. And that's how I feel about $50,000, $100,000. There's no price and monetary value you can add on honor and integrity. There is none. In fact, it actually costs you to maintain integrity and honor in life, right? So all I'm saying is when you have opportunity to get your hands on grossing 1 million, 1.2, 1.75 million, and it's good business against a fighter that you know in your heart you can beat and your team knows, we shouldn't even be having this conversation. And if you scared, say you scared. Stop talking tough. Not the fighter, see? Brian Norman Jr. got suffered the consequences all because his father, unfortunately, like these other fathers in boxing, I can name two to five of them right now, but I'm not. Leave it on senior. Trying to live vicariously through their sons. And the fighter has to suffer the consequences of being scrutinized and being criticized and being called a duck or being exposed because the father jumps on people's YouTube channels and in interviews with the media and degrade other fighters and analyze other fighters. Bill Haney do it, Floyd Schofield Sr. do it, and Brian Norman Sr. do it. Don't make it racial because all three of them are black. Don't make me go there because that's another story for another day. All I'm trying to say is this. These fathers that don't know the business of boxing need to humble themselves, be quiet, go in the background, and let their sons get the attention. Let their sons generate a fan base by connecting with the audience and getting the camera time instead of trying to dance in all the videos, trying to be all in the cameras, want to be on all the interviews, dominating the conversations. It's about the fighter, y'all. It's about the professional boxer. It's about them, the ones who sacrifice their lives, sacrifice their family time, sacrifice everything about what it takes to become successful in this sport and in this business. And they should get the credit, and they deserve the recognition. And speaking of deserve, and I'll leave out with this. Brian Norman Jr., his team need to understand this. It's not about what you think and what you feel about what you deserve. You know how people always say, and usually women say it, but I've heard a few men say it too. I know my worth. I know what I bring to the table. I'm not settling for less. I have requirements. I have standards. I know my worth. People talk about what they deserve and what they deserve and what they deserve. One of the reasons why I tell people personally this all the time. One of the reasons why I don't talk about what I deserve is because there are things in my life I can tell you unequivocally that I do deserve. But God has so much grace on me and has shown me so much favor that the things I actually do deserve, he don't allow me to get it. Right? Some of y'all might not understand that, and some of you do. There are things that I actually do deserve. But God's grace, his mercy, his favor on my life, he allows me not to experience some of the sufferings that I do deserve. Right? But there's some other things in my life that I do have that I don't deserve. And God's same grace, his mercy, and his unfailing love allows me the opportunity, right? And the experience to have things that I really don't deserve. Some of you understand me and some of you don't. So because of those two things, I don't talk about what I deserve and what I don't deserve. I'd rather talk about what I earn. Right? And my second point in closing, final thoughts. When people say, I know my worth, it's Sunday, so you know I can preach. I know my worth. I deserve. I want. I know what I bring to the table. You know, one of the things I stopped doing, I stopped listening when people tell me what their worth is. I do. I'm now, granted, I'm going to basically coincide my point into the dating environment, because most women usually say, I know my worth, right? So I don't ask women what their worth is, never did. But my point is, I stopped listening when I hear single women tell me, or used to tell me, I know my worth. Hey, Ariana. Who else here? Ty here. I think I acknowledged Ty already. But I know my worth. I know my worth. I say Ariana because she said, good afternoon, Manager Marty, in the chat. I know my worth. You know, I used to hear a lot of single women tell me that, you know, being on the market and all, you know. I know my worth. Okay. That's your worth is between you and God. I'm not interested in your worth. Yeah, I'm not interested. That's between you and God if you believe in God. I hope you do, because you can't get my phone number if you don't believe. Anyway, that's between you and God. You know your worth. I'm glad to hear that. In fact, as adults, we all should know our worth, right? Great. Glad to hear that. But you know what I'm more interested in? And the older I get, the more I'm able to appreciate this. That's why I don't ask or listen to someone or entertain a woman that tells me what their worth is. You know what I've gotten in touch with? I'm about to teach a single man something real quick. I don't ask about what a woman's worth is. You know what I ask? How can you add value to my life? I wish a single woman would just ask a man that. If you're looking to find somebody real, right, and be in a real relationship, right, a monogamous relationship, men and women, just ask the next person you're interested in. I'm talking about when you get, not when the first day you meet them. Don't be crazy and be no weirdo, okay? All I'm saying is, you know, when you get to those levels where you talked enough and you went out on a few dates and you've gotten to know each other a little bit, just ask. It's very simple. And they might not have the answer today, but what you're doing is you're asking them so that they can tell you. And then watch this. After they tell you, if they decide to tell you, you sit back and you evaluate their actions. How can you add value to my life? I'm segueing that into what we're talking about today on a professional level. Brian Norman Jr.'s representation is trying to tell Eddie Hearn, a man that's willing to offer them $1.7 million, what their worth is. Your worth is not based on how you feel and what you think. Because when it comes to God, we are too sinful to even talk about what we are worth. And he paid the price for all of us and our sins. So with that being said, nobody has the right to tell somebody what their worth is. I'll tell you what your worth is based on. It's not based on what you think. In the business of boxing, it's not based on what you feel. It's based on what the person or people or entity is willing to invest in you. That's what your worth is. I'm talking about business now. I just segue the personal to the professional so that you can understand where I'm going with it. How can you add value to the promoter's wallet or pocketbook? How can you add value to the promoter's event that they're trying to facilitate? How can you add value to the promotion's bottom line? That's what your worth is. Because the last time I checked, the boxes that we usually check off as managers and promoters in the business of boxing, Brian Norman Jr. don't check any of those boxes off except for one, and that's being a world champion fighter. And I'm using a specific criteria so that no one can misinterpret what I'm saying. If Brian Norman Jr. is worth more than $1.75 million, then that means his actions should dictate what his team is saying out of his mouth. It's no different if a woman tell me or you or anyone else, I know my worth. Okay, well, what is your worth? It's no different if a man tell a woman what his worth is. Okay, fine. I'm glad to hear that. He's glad to hear that. She is glad to hear that. Now, when you step back, you got to sit down and evaluate with actions. Yeah. A man can come to a single woman all day long and say, my worth is being a husband. But yet he's still for the streets with his actions. A woman can tell you, my worth and what I bring to the table are qualities of being a wife. But she's still for the streets with her actions. So who you going to believe? The person who's coming to you with what they're saying out of their mouth? Or the person that's coming to you showing you with their actions what they're doing? Anybody can tell someone what their worth is. If Brian Norman Jr.'s worth was more than $1.75 million, then his actions should not have drove him to make $100,000 to $150,000 in his last fight. In other words, that's the base. If $1.75 million was not enough to get him in the ring to compete against Boots, and that was the base, more than in other words, it exceeds 1.75 million. That's the base. Well, how can you go fight for 10% of $1 million? You fought in your fight. Wait, your worth is here, which exceeds 2 million. But you fought in your last fight for 5% of that? There's something wrong with that math. Hey, that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Your worth is not based on how you feel in life. And your worth is not based on what you think. It's based on your performance. It's based on projection. And it's based on probability. The probability of how much and how fast a promoter in boxing will not only recoup their initial investments, but also make a profit. And if your actions can't dictate that and check off the boxes that we use categorically speaking, then $1.75 million is good money. And with that being said, because his actions dictated that he's willing to go 5% at his max of competing for $100,000 in his last fight, and Boots nearly sold out 3 consecutive boxing events within a matter of 10 to 12 months and earned another title, Brian Norman Jr. has absolutely no leverage to even receive not even half of what they were asking for in the first place. You know what? I figured it out, y'all, after an hour and a half. I'm doing way too much talking.